Asad, are you there? Sure. No problem.
चलो आता हूँ फिर।
आपका कनेक्ट हो गया।
हाँ, कैमरा भी ऑन कर लिया। चलो ठीक है, मैं स्टार्ट करता हूँ। अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
कितने हो गए पार्टिसिपेंट? शुरू करें क्या?
आप इजाजत दीजिए तो शुरू करा जाए।
मेरे हिसाब से शुरू करते हैं। असल में मैं नमाज पढ़ने लगा था, लेट हो गया।
श्योर नो प्रॉब्लम। वहाँ पे तो क्या टाइम हो रहा है?
यहाँ पर हो रहा है 11 रात। अभी सुबह हो रहा है आपको? सुबह उठ के
No, it's fine.
ये शुरू करते हैं। प्रेजेंटेशन का फर्स्ट पेज लिखा देते तो
मैं शेयर करूँ स्क्रीन? ओके।
एक मिनट, रिकॉर्ड कैसे होगा?
So
पहले मैं आपको इंट्रोड्यूस कर देता हूँ, फिर उसके बाद
what do you see right now, by the way?
I think I'm getting your screen.
It's presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Hang on. Give me a sec. I'm not familiar to my Teams. Like we really use Teams.
Okay, let's start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the event on research, how to write research proposal. And our speaker is Wasif Bhai, and he's from Michigan State University. He's currently pursuing his PhD. And all of you know, I think I'm Asad, and I'm the moderator of this event. And speaker is Wasif Bhai, so he will start his presentation now. You can start.
So can you see my screen?
Yes, we are getting your screen.
And you can hear me loud and clear?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Okay, so assalamu alaikum everyone, and good morning to anyone joining to the western part of the world or anyone joining, and good evening to those joining from India. My name is Mohammad Wasif Naqvi, and I'll be presenting on the topic how to write an effective research proposal today. So, just a little bit about me. I'm currently a graduate research assistant in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Michigan State University, USA. I am enrolled in a PhD program. I enrolled in 2020. I I moved to US to pursue my master's at University of Toledo, and I did my bachelor's from Aligarh Muslim University in 2018. Uh, I can say with no doubt my time in Aligarh was one of the best time of my life. So right now, I'm working on a National Science Foundation project, which is basically engineered water repellency to mitigate frost susceptibility, decoupling osmotic and metric potential. It is a project related to geotech as well as pavement, and my research areas are frost-susceptible soil, soil stabilization, debris flow, and tunnel. Here is my photo with mascot of our university. Our university mascot is a Spartan. So yeah. So let's dive into the presentation. Just to go through the outline, I'll be talking what is the research proposal and why do you need it, and what are the things you need to make sure before you start working on the research proposal. I'll talk a little bit about the components of research proposal, most importantly, the research questions and hypothesis, and then I will talk about the common errors that people make, the common pitfalls while writing a research proposal. Finally, I'll go through some checklists that you need to check before submitting a research proposal, and some tips and tricks, some common tips, and some of my personal tips as well. Well, what is a research proposal? Basically, it's a document outlining the research that you're going to do in master's or PhD program. This document go along with your applications, and it varies. The requirement varies from university to university. Some university require a very brief one, some requires a very detailed one. But if this you're going to be submitting this document as a part of your master's or PhD application. Like I said, it's a part of an admission application, but I put a question mark here because, well, I know that this research proposal is a document necessary in European universities and also in Australian universities. But as far as the US is concerned, uh, developing a research proposal before joining the program is not necessary. It's not needed basically. So you need to make sure the place you are applying and make sure whether a research proposal is needed or not. What but everyone will write research proposal at some point in their program. Some of you will write during your applications, while in US what we do is we write it generally in our third or fifth semester when we do our proposal defense. So in any ways, this presentation is going to help you with how to write a research proposal because you're going to be doing it at some point of your studies. It is typically between 15 to 4,000 words, which is 3 to 8 pages. This criteria is generally for the application research proposal, but it varies substantially from different programs in different universities. The important point is there is no universal style in writing the research proposal. The requirement varies. Some universities will give you their own format, and you have to fill up those spaces in different sections. And some universities will just ask you to write a document with some particular sections. Well, there is no universal style, but there are some basic standards that you can stick to. And if you follow those basic standards, and combine them with the particular university requirement, you will end up writing a good research proposal. The important thing is it is not set in stone, especially when you are applying for a PhD program and the university requires a research proposal. You're going to be submitting one research proposal with your application, but it's going to change with time. While you progress into your PhD program or master's program, this proposal is going to develop, it's going to change, it's going to be modified. So keep that in mind that whatever you're writing, this research proposal is not set in stone, it's not absolute, it's very tangible, it's going to be changed in the future. Well, why do you need it? Apart from being the application requirement, since your application won't be completed without this research proposal, it has other benefits as well. Uh, it is used to persuade potential supervisor that your work is worthy of their support. So let's say you're applying in some university in Europe and you contact the supervisor and uh, he shows interest in taking you as a student. But he's going to ask you to write a research proposal, a brief research proposal. So this is the way that you can persuade supervisor that, yeah, I'm a good candidate, I'm a good fit for your program and for your research group, to do a PhD degree award. It also shows that there is a need to investigate a research problem, and you justify it by writing some research question and hypothesis. It presents a set of workable strategies for conducting the proposed research. So in the methodology section of the research proposal, you're going to be talking in detail how you're going to do this research. Is this going to be workable? What strategies you're going to be using? I personally feel this point is very important. The fourth one, through this document, you can impress your prospective supervisor by showing your academic understanding of the subject and your research skill. This document is very powerful. Through this document, you can show the prospective supervisor that, yeah, I have a good academic knowledge, I have a good knowledge of the subject, and I have the capability to develop a research methodology, which is one of the most important part in your PhD program. A good methodology is something that's going to help you in your degree. So this is by this document you can show your skills and potentially get an admission in some good universities and under some good research group. But before you start writing a research proposal, there are something you need to take care of. Most importantly, check whether it's part of the application for the program. So like I said, this is a requirement in Europe, in Australia, but it is not a requirement in USA. I remember in 2019, when I was applying for University of Melbourne in Australia, I wrote a research proposal for them, and it got accepted as well. But then I ended up joining Michigan State. So this is very important, and like you need to first decide like which part of the world you're planning to do your PhD. If you are certain that you're going to be end up in doing PhD in Europe, then you should better start preparing your research proposal because you're going to be needing it for your application. But for USA, I can pretty much say with 99% surety that it's not a part of your application. But anyways, you can of course make up a research proposal, attach it in the email, and send it to an advisor. Probably he will see your capabilities in the research proposal, that this guy has the potential to come up with the research question and a good methodology, and he has a good set of idea and how he's going to do his research. It's going to help you in your application, but you may not end up doing research in that topic in USA. Well, since if you need a research proposal, most important thing is you have to plan much ahead. This is not something that's gonna be done in a week or a month, probably even. It is a tedious task. It's gonna take a lot of time. Don't expect. I know we leagues have the have the habit of keeping things to the end, and I still carry that weightage. I still do a lot of things at the end, but procrastination is not a good thing, especially in the case of research proposal. So start working on it pretty ahead in time. Check the deadlines when it's needed. I know in Australia the deadlines are a year ahead. So if you're applying for 2023 of fall August session, then you're going to be writing all these documents by 2022 August. So it's going to be running pretty much 1 year behind. So you have to plan ahead. It's not a weak job, and don't expect a sudden revelation that, okay, you will suddenly come up with an idea and you have a eureka moment of yours. It's not going to happen. And contact the prospective supervisor, your advisor. So of course, you must have jotted down some of the universities that you're going to be applying. So start approaching the advisors. Sometimes what you have to do is you have to develop your research proposal in line with the research that's going in that research group, or sometimes you develop your research proposal and you target those research groups who are doing similar studies. It can go both ways. So contact him, get some basics cleared, like his expectations, what's the length of the proposal needed. Maybe there's a format that's provided by the university that you have to stick to, or maybe it's just normal document. What sections to include? This is very subjective. This depends upon the university to university. Some universities require different sections, and some just give you a lot of liberty to play with it. And check with the previous proposal. If it's possible, ask your potential supervisor to give you the previous proposals, the proposals of the previous student who applied and got admission. And also maybe he can you can approach students in a research group and get this proposal from them. So this is really important. I remember in University of Melbourne application, I approached the advisor and he helped me with writing a research proposal. Uh, he gave me some previous research proposal and I developed my idea around it because they were strictly focused on the geothermal energy concept. So I had to develop research proposal around it. And and this is also important because if you're applying to a university, like let's say some university in Taiwan, and you're trying to target a research group, well, your research proposal should align with the research what's going in that group. If your research proposal is about modeling, you can't expect, and the research group and the advisor generally does experimental, you can't expect your application to go ahead because he's an experimentalist guy. He's not going to be jumping into modeling easily. Those are very distinct research areas. So make sure you contact the advisor, look at his research, and discuss with him. Definitely, in these countries, I know they help you with developing your research proposal. So what is the big picture here? What are we trying to achieve with this research proposal? Well, one of the thing is you identify a problem and you come up with a solution. So you identified a problem in a real world. Let's say in India, we know like we have lots of roads which are pretty bad. Roads don't last longer, and so you come up with some solution. Maybe you come up with a new material design. You come up with a new field, new testing, which can help which can help long life of these pavements or these roads. So this is a very specific. You find a problem, you identified a problem, and you found a solution. Pretty straightforward. The other thing is the knowledge. You are after a new knowledge. So basically, you are targeting some fundamental basic, which will enhance the understanding of some particular topic. This is a difficult one here. So targeting some fundamentals is difficult, especially as far as I know for undergrads, because these are very fundamental topic, and you need to have a good a good understanding of the topic to develop this kind of proposal. But while writing a research proposal, let's say you are trying to solve a problem, or you are after a new knowledge, coming up, tackling some basic fundamental topic, you still have to show that you understand the topic. Your research proposal should reflect this, that, okay, I have a good idea of this topic. I know what I'm doing. So you have to, this should be reflected in your research proposal in your writing. And your proposal, your research questions or your proposal should contribute something. Well, this picture doesn't give a good idea that it's about contribution. So it should tell you that it should express that, yeah, it's going to have a significant contribution in the field. It's going to solve a big problem, or it's going to advance the basic understanding of any topic. So this is going to be important, because if your contribution is good enough, it's major, then your proposal will be of good strength, and you have a good chance of getting accepted into a program. Well, in some of the cases, not generally. I don't expect that that for a PhD application, for the proposal that you write during your application, they generally look for the resources. Resources is a broad term. So one resource is that when you are pursuing a PhD and you are doing a proposal defense, you have to show resources, like you have the testing capabilities of something, you have the machine, you have the apparatus to test something, and you have the funds to pursue this study. But as far as the application proposal is concerned, in my opinion, when I say resource, I'll say that, okay, you have passed research in this area. You have a CV, and you have some research done in the past that shows that you understand this topic and you can potentially pursue this topic. And yeah, overall, basically what you are trying to persuade the potential supervisor that yeah, you deserve it, you deserve admission into this program. So the overall proposal should give an idea that yeah, you are the right candidate for this program, and this should be reflected in your research proposal. So let's take a look at one of the example. This is one of the research proposal. Before diving into different sections of the research proposal, this is one of the example. It is about remediation of misconception about chemical equilibrium, a CAI strategy. Uh, I'm just trying to paint a picture here that how the research proposal looks like. You can see there's a clear, concise title. There is no misunderstanding in the title, although there's a word misconception in the title. And then we have introduction section that's divided into 3 paragraphs. And then we have like clear-cut research question that this guy, this person is trying to address. And then he has a pretty good methodology. He's talking about what are the subjects, what are the instruments and procedure he's going to follow. Methodology is one of the heaviest section in the proposal because you can only have develop a good methodology once you know how to conduct this research. So he has gone in briefly but precisely on what methodology he's going to be using. Then he has a literature review, which is 4 paragraph. This is one of the exhaustive tasks of doing a research is the literature review. It's critical, but it's exhaustive. And then finally, he has a timetable for completing the thesis. Well, you need to have a timetable because if you are pursuing a PhD program, it is around 3 to 4 years. You are not supposed to do something that, let's say, for example, you're conducting a research that requires your data collection for 10 years. Well, if you keep collecting data for 10 years, when are you going to do start doing your own, when are you going to start doing actual research? So you need to have a timetable. You need to have that set in your mind that, okay, this is the schedule that I'm going to follow for completing my thesis. Uh, and finally, some references. So what are the components of research proposal? Definitely we have the title like in everything. Then we have introduction and background. Sometimes these are separate and sometimes they are together. You write them in the same in the same area. It also has literature review in introduction section also involves literature review in some of the research proposal, but while in some of the research proposal you have to write a separate literature review in a separate section. Most importantly, research question and hypothesis. This is the gist of your research proposal. So it's all about your research question. If your research question is good, your research is going to be good. Your application is going to be good. The methodology which shows your understanding of the topic, that yeah, you understand this topic and you have a nice methodology which can produce some results which can answer this question. The significance of your study, which will be critical for your application, since your advisor, your funding may sometimes come from different sources. Like maybe it's not coming from a project, it's coming from university fellowship or something. So your proposal should have a significant that university sees is that on a broader scale have some impact. So university sees this significant and see, okay, this research is going to be good for our university, for our program. So let's fund this guy. Then, like I said, like I showed the timeline before, there needs to be a timeline in your proposal, and then bibliography. So, like I said, most important is the research question. Your whole proposal revolves around this research question. So let's talk a little bit more about research question. Like I said, research question can be of 2 types generally. Typically, there are 2 types. One is you are trying to tackle a fundamental problem, which is basically advances in our understanding of some basic topics, some basic concepts, like very fundamental, like for example, you are trying to understand a phenomena, you are trying to understand a physical process. In the case of soil, which is my background, I'm a geotechnical background, uh, or pavement, let's say you are trying to understand that how the potholes, how the pavement is failing, how the cracks in the pavement propagate to the surface. So these kind of fundamental problems, this is challenging to come out because you need to have a good theoretical framework, theoretical understanding of the topic to come up with a fundamental problem. This is an example here. Why does the load bearing capacity of soil change sharply at some critical clay content? So You are trying to tackle some fundamental problem here because you are trying to understand the behavior of behavior of clay, and why does the bearing capacity suddenly changes at some particular clay content. This is not a general like a like a problem and you are just solving it. You are trying to advance the understanding of this of this topic. The second type of research question is the benefits. Is something that somebody can put to the beneficial use. It's more like applied. So a lot of places, a lot of universities, they get research, they get proposals, they have a projects from industry. So what industry is targeting, they are trying to solve a particular problem, and if you can come up with a solution of that particular problem, well, you're good enough to do a PhD because it's a very targeted topic and you are pursuing your whole degree, your whole program on that particular topic, trying to solve that particular problem. It is fundamentally different from basic understanding. So an example here is what type of soil is suitable for the foundation of tall buildings. So let's say a region or a state in India is trying to build tall buildings. So they are trying to figure out what is the right location where to construct these tall buildings. So you just do a basic research like, okay, this type of soil is good enough for tall buildings, and these soils are not good enough for tall buildings. So basically, you are doing some research that can be put to beneficial use. Excuse me. Then comes the research hypothesis. Basically, it stems from a research question. What do you expect? What is the prediction of your study? It needs to be specific. You need to be very specific of what do you expect. You cannot be vague about it. It should be testable, falsifiable. You should be able to test your hypothesis with the current with the current testing availabilities, and it predicts that what is going to happen, how a particular change is going to change, how a particular thing is going to change when you change some particular variable in it. So it should give a prediction, a forecast of what you expect. Typically, in a research hypothesis has two parameters. There's an independent and dependent variable, and what you do is try to show the relationship between these variables. The dependent variable, how it depends upon the independent variable, how they interact with each other. So, for example, this is one of the example of hypothesis. Highly reducing conditions with the depletion of hydrogen will result in higher PFOS fermentation rate. So here we have two variables. We have depletion of hydrogen, which is one variable, and PFOS fermentation rates is a dependent variable. So the depletion of the PFOS fermentation rate is directly depending on depletion of hydrogen, and you see that the behavior is it gets higher, resulting in higher PFOS fermentation rates. So they are showing the relationship between these independent and dependent variables. Like I said, this hypothesis is specific, it is to the point, it is something that you can test. Well, you can test hydrogen concentration with the current testing methodologies. You can test PFOS fermentation rate. What you are trying to do is show the relationship between these. So this is something that is testable. The hypothesis is testable. Uh, yeah, and it gives you a prediction how the PFOS fermentation rate is going to change by the depletion of hydrogen. This is another example. This is from my own research. This is one of my own hypotheses for my degree, for my research, which is changes in osmotic and metric potential have a predictable effect on frost heaving. So osmotic and metric potential are some of the potential inside the soil matrix. Um, so what, and they are independent variables here. And frost heaving is something when the water inside the soil freezes, it turns into an ice, the soil heaves. So that is another variable here. So what I'm trying to study is like how the osmotic and metric potential affects this frost heaving. In this case, we mentioned that it's a predictable effect because we still don't know it is going to be higher, it's going to be a lower effect because the past studies contradict each other. Some say it's higher, some say it's lower. So, but the idea still remains the same, that the topic is specific. It clearly tells you that we are trying to develop a relationship between osmotic and metric potential with the frost heaving. And we can test all of this. We can test the osmotic potential in the soil. We can test the metric potential in the soil. We can also test the heating in the soil. So it satisfies all the basic criteria required for the research hypothesis. So talking about some of the components, we all know about the title. It needs to be clear and precise, and it should include keywords. So when I say keywords, like how I understand is like, okay, later on, 2 or 3 years later, when I'm done with my PhD, if somebody is researching about this topic, what words they're going to be using, what strings they are going to use to search research on this topic. Well, if they're going to be using these words, so let's put these words in my title. That way, my research can come up and when they are looking for it. So it should include some keywords. It should include keywords. Don't overthink it. This was one of my habit as well. That okay, today I started writing a research proposal. This is my day one, and well, I'm stuck for 3 days and what to come up with a title. The thing is, don't overthink it because this title is going to change. You're going to revise it once you write the research proposal. You may not even need to write a title in the beginning. You can write it once you have the whole structure ready, you have the whole research question methodology ready, and you have a good idea. Then you can come up with a strong title. Or you can just come up with a basic title in the beginning and then change and revise it with time. Uh, the introduction and background section, the idea behind this section is basically you are trying to get readers' attention and orient them. You are trying to tell them, okay, this document is about this research in this area. So you are trying to orient them in the right direction. You are trying to develop the rationality of a proposal by some basic knowledge, basic uh, mechanism in a basic mechanism of that particular topic, some basic definition. So you are basically trying to establish the foundation here. You have to keep it clear and concise. The research proposal for your application doesn't give you a liberty to go in much detail. You will have the liberty to go in detail when you write your thesis. So keep it clear and concise. Uh, Being short and precise is better than being long and putting redundant details. The best way is that assume that reader is a busy person. Well, your advisor is definitely a busy person. He doesn't have time to go through long research proposal. You are writing 10-page introduction. Well, he doesn't have time to do that. Uh, so assume that he's a busy person and write in that way. You in using that strategy, you will be clear and concise in this section. Generally, typically it is 2 to 4 paragraphs, but it can change depending on the requirement of the application of the research proposal of any particular university. Uh, what you're trying to do in this section, basically you are trying to answer the following question. You are trying to tell them the central problem of the study, and of course, why is it important? It needs to be important. That's why you are pursuing this study, and you're talking about the methodology that you're going to be using to analyze that problem, and then what is its significance to the academia and to the world at large. So your research has some significance. That's why you want to do it, and it should have significance because well, you are competing against some of other candidates for the same position. So your proposal should have greater significance to for this research topic, and if you can expand it to the world at large and it still has a good significance, you are a good fit for this program, and your research proposal will be strong. And so sometimes you have to provide definition of key terms or concept. Well, if the topic you're researching on is super complicated, so you need to make sure that you explain some basic concepts or definitions if needed. Literature review, one of the most exhaustive part of any research, and a lot of people are scared of that. Well, I'm one of those, but it's most important, definitely. Literature review, you should start doing very early in your when you're applying for a PhD program or in your PhD. Well, the definition, one of the definition is that this part aims to properly situate your proposed study with the bigger scheme of the things, what is being investigated, while at the same time showing the innovation and originality of your proposed work. So you are trying to basically show where your research fits, what has been done, what you are trying to achieve, what is the originality and innovation of your proposed work. A lot of people try to do literature review in a chronological order. They start from the earliest research to the latest research. This has not been considered a good strategy. Rather than doing chronologically, you should divide it into major themes. Okay, you are researching, your topic is about something X, Y. Then you should divide the literature on the experimental method, all the literature that uses experimental method. Then you should all talk about the literature that using modeling. So you should divide them in the sections rather than in the chronological order. That way it will be more coherent and more cohesive. Include classical as well as recent studies. Mm, some of the people make this mistake is they don't cite recent studies. Well, of course, whatever topic you are working on, there should be some classical studies in those topics. And classical studies can go a long way back. For my proposal, I've been citing research in 1945, 1965. But the important thing is that you should cite some recent studies as well. Okay, because paper written in 1965, 1950, a lot has changed. That maybe the theory has changed. Maybe that theory laid the foundation for this study, but now there is better understanding of the topic. So you should cite some recent studies. Well, we are in 2022 right now, so I should say you should cite. The idea is past 5 years papers should be a part of this literature review as well. One strategy to follow is the 5 C's strategy. Uh, the 5 C's are the cite, compare, contrast, critique, and connect. So cite the literature pertinent to your research proposal, then compare the argument, the methodologies, the similar approaches that they have been using, and also contrast them. Then show the differences in the methodology, show the disagreement or the debate where on this topic that you are trying to research on. Also then critique the literature. This is where you give your opinion, like, okay, this methodology sounds more rigid, more strong, and there are some loopholes in the other methodology. uh, this approach looks good, and this is more reliable or valid or appropriate. And connect all these literature with what you are trying to do. The whole idea is that only that you are trying to relate them to your work. So you are trying to show a path to a reviewer, to your potential supervisor, that okay, this is all has been done, and I am trying to do this. So how your own research and fits into this whole literature review is something very important. One of the questions we often come across is how do we find a research gap? Because literature review is something you're going to start doing before developing a research question, because you need to know what's going in that topic before coming up with a research question. So how do you find a research gap? And that's something you do while doing a literature review. Well, one of the ways you can find the lack of study or insufficient study in some particular topic. So, being a background in soil in geotechnical engineering, so I can probably think about that some particular topic that's not been researched on some particular soil type. Let's say that a research is missing in organic soil, so I'm going to be studying organic soils because people haven't measured some parameters in organic soil, the hydraulic conductivity, for example. So if there is some missing link, then missing group of soil, missing group of in any research, then filling this gap is something I would call a research gap. Well, in some cases, the like let's say for example, there's a research that only involves males, some kind of biomedical research or medical research. It only involves males. So what you can do is like you can argue that okay, this research can be biased because it only involves males, and it's a generalized study. It doesn't necessarily has to have just males. It should have females to get a better idea. So this is one research gap. What you do is okay, I'm going to broaden this research, and I'm going to be including males and female as well. The other thing is a geographical gap. A lot of the research in US can also be done in India as well. So this is a geographical gap. So you can explore this area to develop a research to find a research gap as well. One is a lack of understanding. This area is basically you are trying to advance the understanding of a particular topic. So there is a topic and there are conflicting theories on it. One group of research says this and the other group of research says the opposite. So what you are trying to do is come up with the right theory. You are going to argue, okay, I think this is the right theory, so I'm going to be, and I'm going to prove it by my research. So basically, you are trying to come up with you are trying to tackle the problem of the conflicting theories. Uh, Also, the different results from the similar study. Well, for example, in my case, the salt concentration in my own research, uh, the salt concentration in the soil can cause more heaving. Some research says that, and some research says no, it is not going to affect any heaving, or some say it actually reduce the heaving. So there are different results for the similar study. So what you can do is perform this study and justify, no, this is going to be the right the right result from this study is going to be this. And ways of approaching a problem. Well, for the research, some people are experimentalists, some people are modeler. So let's say for a topic, majority of the study is done in the experimental aspect. Nobody has tried to do a modeling. So the analysis of the study using computer models. So you can of course try to write a research proposal where we are trying to do is, okay, you are trying to model something in the computer, which is the currently the modeling is very much in demand right now, because you can tackle a lot of problem that you do experimentally in months in just like few seconds in the modeling. um, so this is one way of finding a research gap. And the problem with previous studies. So previous study may have some limitations, uh, like their methodology may not be strong enough. They don't have sufficient amount of data. Well, they tested only two samples and they are concluding this is the effect. Well, maybe this is the effect for those two particular samples. So you have to increase the size of the samples. You have to increase the number of samples, uh, or you can analyze the data differently. Like I said, okay, you have a lot of data coming from your research, coming from the past research. Well, you can do is you can do a statistical analysis to give better results. This is normally done a lot in the transportation area and the traffic area. In the traffic areas, they have data coming from all over the US, basically in all the countries. So if you can analyze the data nicely and come up with some good hypothesis, then it's going to be a good study. Well, I have already talked about research question and hypothesis, but typically there are two or three research questions. You can have more questions, but in that case, try to include them as a sub question, because you don't want to make your studies like with lots of questions. Because that's going to be challenging and may not be feasible during the time of your PhD. So what you can do is you can make the main two or three questions and then include sub questions if needed. The questions should be written in a single sentence. This section should also have what you plan to achieve, your aims, goals, and objectives. Then the methodology section. This is one of the heaviest section. It's going to be long and detailed. The central idea is to convince the reader that your research design and methodology will properly address the problem of the study. Well, you're trying to tackle a problem or you're trying to advance an understanding, then you should explain how you're going to do it. This is the section you're going to answer that. And your methodology should be strong enough. It should be well, if you're trying to advance an understanding, let's say in a soil sample, if there is a shear failure, maybe a lot of the people in the past have used some CT scan or microscope, and now you are trying to advance the understanding by using more different technology, by using X-ray spectroscopy or something, some other technology to get the better understanding of the shear failure. But you need to show that, yeah, this methodology works, this methodology can do that, can solve that problem or answer the question. It aims to assure the reader that selected method offers the means to efficiently interpret the likely study outcomes. Like I said, it should reflect that, yeah, it will answer the question and efficiently interpret the likely study outcomes. Well, methodology section may be very long. Generally, it's long because you need to talk a lot bit in detail about your proposal. You need to mention the materials or system that you're going to be testing, the method that you're going to be used. This is one of the basic, like about any research proposal. Your methods, like are you going to be doing like experimental, you're going to be doing analytical, or it's going to be survey based, or it's going to be computational modeling. So you have to mention that in detail and why this particular technique you're going to be using, because is this efficient enough? Is this going to give a better idea of this particular study? This is all the question that you're going to be answering in this methodology section. Also, the data analysis method are going to be statistically analyzing the data or analytically analyzing the data, and how you're going to interpret the results. So are you going to do a qualitative interpretation or a quantitative interpretation of your results? Why you are doing a qualitative interpretation? Why you are not doing a quantitative interpretation? Uh, then finally, there like also the limitations of your study. Well, in one research you cannot tackle all the problems, so you always have to carry the baggage of the limitation. All the research, every research has some limitations or assumptions, so you have to mention those assumptions and limitations in this section. Don't be scared to mention those. They are not gonna minimize your reduce your credibility of the research proposal, because you mentioning this limitation is better than somebody else arguing, okay, you have this big limitation. So if you mention this beforehand, then then it's better, because then that way you can orient them in the right direction. One of the ways to write methodology is draw example from the past literature and see the approaches that past studies have used, and list those approaches and say like, okay, this approach has shown good result, good convincing results. So I'm going to be sticking this approach for my research as well. But you have to justify everything you write, every methodology that you are using for your research. You have to justify. Like I said, if you are interpreting the data qualitatively, you have to justify why you are doing a qualitative analysis, why you're not doing a quantitative analysis. This is most weighted section, like I mentioned earlier. What is the significance of your study? Well, your study needs to be significant. That's why you are doing the research, and it needs to be significant, more significant than the other applicants, because you are competing among many different research proposals, many other candidates. So it should be significant, and it should be much significant on a bigger scale. So what you are trying to write in this section is, why is this work significant, and trying to justify that, yeah, this supervisor should work on this project. This is something that needs to be answered, that needs to be tackled. How does your work stand out from others? What is the originality of this work? What will be the broader impact of your study? So in US, one of the big funding agencies, the National Science Foundation. They basically, my work is basically on the National Science Foundation project. They try to tackle the fundamental problems in the fundamental understanding of the topic. If you are writing a research proposal for them, you need to include a section which is broader impact, like how broadly your research is going to affect the world. What is the broader impact of your study? For example, in my case, we are trying to solve this ice lens formation in the soil, and how does it affect the pavement sections. And we are trying to relate it to the study in the Mars, like, okay, we saw some ice lens formation in the Mars, as well. So this study is going to be somewhere helpful for the future of the research that's going on in the Mars as well. From your research, how the expected outcomes will affect future studies, practice, theory, policy making, procedure, etc. These are all the things that you need to mention, or maybe you need to mention some of these, how your study is gonna affect these areas, and also you have to give a recommendation for further studies. Well, you cannot solve all the problems, so some part of it you have to leave for the others. So you have to mention those in your significant section. Timeline. Like I said, your project is 3-4 years, so you need a timeline. Your project cannot be unrealistic that you need to create a test section and you need to monitor it for 5-6 years. Well, if you monitor it for 5-6 years, when are you going to analyze the data or interpret the data? So you need to have a timeline. It also shows that yeah, your understanding of the topic and understanding of what you're trying to achieve, and it is feasible to do in the amount of time that's available in your PhD, and it is going to change as you progress. So this is a common thing. You come up with a timeline while writing a research proposal, but these change drastically, especially in the COVID times. Everything was messed up. So my project is basically running 1.5 year well, 1 year behind. So this is gonna change during during your program, and also the objectives are gonna change. So don't try to make a lot of fuss about this section. Yeah, it gives a better idea that yeah, you understand the topic, you can do it in the limited time frame. But yeah, uh, just keep it basic. And there, in some of the cases, like which I didn't discuss much in detail, they are very basics. Some of the proposal may require you to submit an abstract. Well, abstract is the same strategy. It's 300 to 500 words. You talk a little bit about your introduction section. You talk about methodology, and you talk about your hypothesis and questions. Well, generally, the budget is not the section you include in your research proposal for PhD application, but yeah, you're going to be including in your when you are applying for some research grant for some funding agency. And appendices, yeah, if your topic is too complicated that you're researching on, then you need to include more discussion of the topic to give a better understanding. You can have an appendices and discuss those section in that area. Some of the common pitfalls, some of the common errors that people make while making this research proposal. In the introduction section, they sometimes give too little detail and sometimes go too much detail. Well, what I've seen is too much detail more often than too little details because people think in introduction they can write anything they want. They go a lot of tangent in the introduction section. Well, going in the tangent is not something you need to do in the research proposals for your application. That is something you have the liberty to do in your thesis. So try to be specific, concise. This is a short document. You don't have the option to go much in detail. We have poor organization. Create outline, then fill the text. Um, Let me know if I'm running out of time. Asad. We have a lack of objectivity. Uh, well, for the organization thing, what you do is like you write some basic strong sentences, the gist of your paragraph, and then you fill the text. You go in a little bit detail about about that particular paragraph. In the literature review section, a lot of people discuss unnecessary articles. Mm, Literature review is not about writing everything that's going in that topic. You just have to be write what is relevant to your research that you're going to be doing. Because trust me, it, this literature review is something that you can do your rest of your life. You can just spend a time doing literature review for your rest of the for the whole PhD program. So you should only be doing review of the articles relevant to your project, your research, and don't uh, because there are like hundreds of articles on your topic as well. So try to be specific on your research topic, but make sure you cite major work. There are some fundamental articles um, like in our case, in the geotechnical background, there are a lot of research done by Terzaghi, who is a father of soil mechanics. So if you he has explained a lot of concepts. So if try to cite those papers, if you are citing papers from them that shows that you know where this research uh, came from, what are the roots of this topic, and what are the fundamental understanding and how it has evolved with time. In the hypothesis and objective section, try to write a realistic objective. Your objective shouldn't be like it is something that is not possible to achieve in the time frame. Don't complicate the objective. The objective is something I say like if somebody reads it the first time and he understands it, he doesn't have to go through it twice to understand the objective. So it should be very clear and it should be understandable in the first instance. And lack of cohesiveness in the objective. So you have two, three objectives, and well, they are completely mutually exclusive and they don't relate to each other. Well, that is something you need to be careful about because you are doing a research on a particular topic. So your objectives should be closely knitted together, not very close because you want to be independent of them at the same time, but still they should be relatable. And interdependence of objective for success. So like in the previous one, I mentioned like lack of cohesiveness of the objective, which is basically they should be relatable, but they should not depend upon each other. So let's say you have three objectives. Well, the second objective depends only on the success of the first objective. Well, what happens? What will you do if your first objective fails? So you need to have some interdependency on those objectives. Well, even if your first objective fails, something that you are not able to prove or justify, well, you can still justify the second objective. In the methodology section, lacking experimental detail is one of the errors, especially when you are trying to come up with a novel technique to measure something, then you need to be more detailed because you need to justify it strongly, like, yeah, this technique is going to help you solve this question, solve this problem, and this is a good technique. So you have to justify that. Missing controls in a lot of study, you need to have controls in your research. So make sure you mention those in the proposals. Continuing with common pitfalls, these are some general pitfalls. They are long paragraphs containing too many ideas. So paragraphs should be concise, central, centralized on one main idea. So each paragraph should be centralized upon one main idea. It shouldn't have too many ideas. They should be in separate paragraphs if you have multiple ideas. Don't include unnecessary content. I can't stress that enough, especially for the research proposal for the application. You cannot include unnecessary content. You don't have the liberty to do that. Using jargon, using terms that are not very familiar to other people, the common people. So remember that your research proposal is gonna go through the research committee as well, and that research committee is not necessarily someone who is from your background. So you are using some terms that only people from your background understand. Don't do that, because those guys, those committee members are going to play an important role in approving your funding and in giving you an admission. So avoid using jargon and define all observation and all novel terms clearly. Some of the checklists. So once you are done writing a proposal, what you need to make sure is go through this list, see if you satisfy all these criteria. You have shown a solid understanding of the current state of knowledge in the introduction or the background section. You have identified good research question. Your research is as good as your research question. So if you identify a good research question, it's going to make a strong proposal. Any alternative or additional question, make sure that your research questions aren't like are sufficient in itself, that nobody thinks that okay, you cannot answer this question without answering an additional question. So you need to make sure that you address all the questions necessary for your research. Your approach should be good enough, the methodology should be good, and it should be feasible within the application time and resource constant. Any you should mention any, you should see that okay, if you want to test this hypothesis, you need to make sure all the tests that you need to do to come up with the answer to that research question. So make sure you see to cross check that okay, do I need any more tests, do I need any alternative tests, and the identification of the expected result. You should be able to develop a good hypothesis. Okay, this is what I'm expecting in my proposal, and the benefits from the proposed research. You should be able to jot down some of the major benefits of your proposed research. This is, I think, probably the last slide. Some tips, some of the common tricks is following the 4 C's for effective writing. What are the 4 C's? The coherence, cohesive, clear, and concise. So whenever you are doing some academic writing, you need to be coherent. In the case of proposal, it should be easy to follow. That your paragraphs should relate to each other. Your sections should relate to each other. You cannot have methodology section at the end of the proposal because it's unpractical. It's vague. You need to discuss methodology right after the research questions. It should be cohesive. Each sentence should connect to the previous sentence. So one of my professor in the civil engineering department at AMU gave me this great idea, advice basically, that whenever you are writing some academic writing, especially the research proposal, it should feel like a story. You are telling a story to someone. So when they read a particular sentence, they feel a desire to read the next sentence. So you need to, well, it is difficult, I must say, it is to say, but difficult to do, but it should be cohesive, that all the sentences should relate to each other. It should be clear, say exactly what you mean, don't beat around the bush, and it should be concise, don't be wordy, especially in the case of application proposal, research proposals, be specific and don't be wordy. Prefer active voice rather passive voice. Uh, Proofread your proposal. I can't stress that enough about this. You have to go through a proposal back and forth again and again, revise it. And one of the best things you can do is share it with your friends, with your faculty, with your colleagues to get an opinion upon your proposal. Uh, because you will revise this proposal. There is no perfect proposal. You will have to revise it, especially in the first instance. You cannot come up with a good proposal, so you will be revising it a lot of time, addressing the problems in your proposal. Create a database for literature review. This is one of my well, it's not my personal trick, but everybody has their own trick. But I use a particular spreadsheet to do my literature review, and I'm happy to share with you guys if you wanna need that spreadsheet. It's very easy to create a database of a literature review. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and you can quickly find the research relevant. Like if like that spreadsheet has divided research related to experimental, analytical. So I'll be happy to share that literature review spreadsheet. Use Google Scholar for literature review. People sometimes underestimate the Google Scholar. It is very strong and powerful tool. The best thing, it's easy to follow and it's powerful. You will find all the research in the Google Scholar mostly. One of the trick I would suggest here, that you remember, if I mentioned that you have to cite a classical study in your literature review, right? But you have to cite some recent studies. So let's say you find a classical study in your Google Scholar, in the Google Scholar page. There is an option in under that paper, in the article, cited by. So go to that cited by section, and then when you go to a new page, there you will see the articles who are citing this classical study, and filter that with the recent. So when you sort them with the recent time, then you will see articles who are working on that topic and who are also using that fundamental idea. Sorry, that fundamental idea, and those will be the recent articles. So that is one way I use to find recent studies in the Google Scholar, and it's been very powerful since then. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks to this organization for inviting me to give this speech, give this webinar, uh, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Wasif bhai, for a great speech. If anyone has question, can ask. For me, it's very interesting webinar. I enjoyed it a lot. I never heard like a detailed presentation before. So I think it will help in my PhD application also.
Sure.
Also, I am from geotechnical background, so I think I understand almost every part of the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to give some general example, but yeah, background is geotechnical, so can't escape from that.
Yeah, it's okay. So anyone has any question, can ask. Okay, maybe we have some questions in the chat box. So there is one question: may I make a concise form of my MTech thesis as research proposal?
Well, if you have already done research on that topic, then probably not. Uh, what you can do is you can proceed further, like on that research. So you have solved some, you have some particular question in your MTech thesis that you are trying to tackle. You can advance it further. You can go more in detail. Okay, and you can increase the sample size, or like widen your research. Basically, that is something you can do. And yeah, MTech thesis. This is something that you have already researched upon, so you have a good idea, but you have to come up with some new question or some new hypothesis.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have one. Whether the literature review be mentioned in the introduction section or it should be mentioned in the separate section?
Oh, depending upon the requirement of your proposal. So I saw some proposals where they do like within their literature review is within the introduction section. But if you are making your own research proposal, I would suggest you to write it in a different section, because even if they have a even the requirement is just to put an introduction section, you can just merge it into the introduction section. But ideally, you should write a research proposal separately, because once you start writing, doing a literature review, you will see it. This section is tough as well as not tough to write, because once you know what you're looking for, it's easy. But if you so you just have to summarize your literatures that you have studied relevant to your topic. So yeah, just to my answer would be like write it separately in a separate section, and then if the university that you are applying for is basically require that within the introduction section, just merge it in the introduction section in a different paragraphs.
There is one more question from Shoaib Azam Faruqi. You can read that. Few IITs offer summer internship for the bachelor's students, and they also ask for the research proposal for from bachelor students.
Well, you said it's. I never looked into that, but it says 500 words. So in 500 words, what I could say is like you have to come up with a good research question. You are not justifying anything here. You are not talking deep into methodology or literature review. You are not doing anything. Your research question should be good. You should. So basically, you are writing an abstract. That is the best way I can put it. If your research proposal is something 500 words, you have to write in the form of abstract. What you can do, rather than writing in a one paragraph, you can within that paragraph you can talk about introduction, the benefit of the topic that you're going to be working on, and then just in the list down the research question that you're going to be tackling on. That's what I would suggest for 500 word limit.
There is another question from Inzamam. May it be a case that supervisor asked to send thesis? I'm asking this because the format and standards of my thesis is poor. Is this possible? That supervisor asked thesis. Is this possible?
I'm trying to read the whole chat since the beginning. May I make a No, I wouldn't suggest you to like if you're applying for a program, they should not get an idea that you have already done research on this topic. So what you are trying to do is you are trying to come up with a new problem and you are trying to tackle those new problems. What you can do with your MTech thesis, ideally you're supposed to publish something and you can put those in your CV that these are the published articles from my MTech thesis, or you can mention somewhere, you can cite your own paper in your proposal that you are writing, that okay, this is the research that's been done in this topic, that shows your credentials, so establishes your credentials. So if your prospective supervisor know that okay, this guy has done this kind of work, he is an experimentalist guy, he knows how to conduct the test, then yeah, it's going to help you. But you cannot summarize your MTech thesis. You need to come up with something better, or uh, yeah, some new research question. If they ask about your MTech thesis, well, I would suggest you try to make it better if possible. But trust me, they are not going to read your full MTech thesis anyway. Sometimes it's just a requirement. For my University of Melbourne application, that is one of the reason I didn't join University of Melbourne, is because they were asking me for my master's thesis. And I can tell you that the advisor himself said that the requirement of thesis is just a requirement. Nobody's going to read it. Sometimes this is an application requirement, and sometimes they're just gonna go through the overview of your thesis to just see like, okay, this guy can write, he has the potential to write academically. So through this MTech thesis, if it's a requirement, they are just looking at your potential to do an academic writing. That's it.
There's another question from Ayman Mushtaq. Okay. Inzimam get everything. You can read the question from Ayman Mushtaq.
I hope I was helpful, Inzimam. Unfortunately, there is no what to say, like a shortcut to this. This research proposal is it's not easy thing. you have to come up with a research question. But of course, you can always approach an advisor in the area that you have been working on and ask him, okay, I have this research experience and I want to pursue further research on this topic. So maybe he can help you. He can help you with some research areas, and then you can develop your proposal around it. Short-term research, visiting research scholars. Amon's question, can I get some insight about preparing research proposal for the short-term research for visiting research scholars? I am not sure if the visiting research scholars come up with a new topic or something. As far as my understanding goes, they basically work under a research group and extend what they are working on, something like that. But of course, you can write your research proposal. Okay, so you're talking about research scholars in India. Yeah, they do sometimes do research on a new topics. But in US, when you have someone visiting from a different country, they come for like 6 months, and what they do is like they do some studies on the research that's going on in the lab, and they don't necessarily write a new research proposal. But for writing a brief research proposal for your visiting short-term research, well, it's the same thing basically. You just have to make it concise. Your research question is going to be just one. So if you are just going for a visiting, you are going as a visiting research scholar, you cannot tackle a lot of questions. You are trying to tackle one question. Your objective can be only one. Your hypothesis can be only one. So the whole idea is your proposal should say that this is something that you can do in 6 months. You are trying to solve some basic problem, something similar.
Any more questions?
I have one query. Is it just like in research paper writing, we have some problem and we try to solve that problem by some method? So is it the research proposal is similar to that? Or is it different?
It's not similar, to put it simply, because that is something you are going to, when you are writing a research article, you already have your results, you already know what you found out, and you know how you are interpreting the data and all. In the research proposal, you are going to do that research. So when you are writing a research question, you may not necessarily know what do you expect from your research. Your hypothesis may be that, okay, you see the effect of X on Y, and X is supposed to increase when the Y increases. This is something, the whole idea of this proposal is you expect something that this is going to happen. The other thing is your methodology section is going to be something, you are trying to be more general in your research proposal in the methodology section, because you are going to change your methodology as you progress into your program. So you cannot be very specific. Oh, I'm going to use 5 samples in my test. Oh, you don't know how much samples you're going to be using in your test. So you need to be very generalized when you're writing a methodology. Of course, your research article doesn't have research question or hypothesis sections. So you have to write that for your research proposal. Introduction section could be similar, but in the research article, your introduction section generally, in the last paragraph, you discuss, okay, you found out this, you tackle the problem. But in the research proposal, you basically discuss like, okay, if we tackle this problem, this is going to be helpful in this long run. This is going to be the broader impact. This is going to be the significance of this topic, of this research.
I have one question. This is personal question from you. How much time you took to write a research proposal?
For my application?
Yes.
Oh, it's like 2 months.
Okay.
1 or 2 months. But trust me, it depends. It depends on the research group. If they like you as a candidate, the advisor, the supervisor is gonna help you a lot in writing a research proposal. He's gonna like literally tell you, okay, write this. These are the research questions we're gonna tackle. But but in some cases you may have to write the whole research proposal. So yeah, I started like 1 or 2 months earlier. When I was applying for my master's program in Australia, it took a lot of time. I took help from some of the faculties in civil engineering department at AMU. So yeah, you need to start pretty early. But for your PhD proposal defense, which you do in your third or fifth semester, well, yeah, you need to start writing on the very first day, I suppose.
It's look like it's quite difficult or easy if we are starting on the time.
Yeah, the timeline is very important. Like I said, this is not something you're gonna have a revelation like sudden revelation that okay, I'm gonna do this. You're gonna revise it, revisit it again and again. You're gonna fill the loopholes. You're gonna even change your research question possibly. So doing an extensive and good literature review is one of the necessary thing here.
Okay.
So this means writing research proposal is just if we have came across some new idea, then we can write a research proposal, and after implementing it and getting some result, we can write some research article.
Mm, uh, okay, can you repeat that? Actually, didn't get the question here.
For example, I have came across some new idea, some new concept. So on that concept or on that idea, I can write some research proposal that I want to do like this, and this methodology I can use like this. And after implementing that and after execution of that idea, the result which I got, I can use that for my article.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your research article only comes after you do the research that was based on your research proposal. So once you write a research proposal, you got accepted into a program, you do research, and then you're gonna publish your result in some journal or conference. So yeah, you do this later on. And a lot of the things that you're gonna write in your research article are gonna be similar to the research proposal. Like a lot of the things you're gonna take from the introduction section, your methodology section, they're gonna be similar in your research article and the research proposal. The difference would be like in the research proposal, your methodology may not be very specific. In your research article, you're going to be very specific that okay, I tested 6 specimens, but you're not going to mention this in the research proposal how many specimens you're going to be testing. So a lot of things, the research proposal is going to help you write a research article definitely. But yeah, you do research article after the research proposal. So you are in Taiwan right now.
Yes, I'm in Taiwan.
So what are you working on?
I'm working on vibrations generated from high-speed rail.
Oh, high-speed rail network, nice. Yeah, there's not a lot of research in the railways in US.
Yes. But I think high-speed rail, most of the research are in China and Japan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, my research topic also like in China there is some high-speed railway network being constructed right now, and they came up with this frost heave problem over there. So recently, China also started solving this frost
Yeah,
heave
my
problem.
research is similar to this. Like in China, there is frost and heave, and in Taiwan, because of heavy rainfall, so there is problem of change in water level.
Okay,
So,
yeah, yeah,
so I'm doing something like the change in vibration pattern because of the change
yeah.
in water level.
So you're modeling or like you have a setup?
No, I'm just like my professor has installed some sensors on the site, and I'm just analyzing those signal. So my
Oh, okay.
research is kind of signal processing.
Yeah, well, interpreting the data is one of the difficult tasks, and you can, well, like, yeah, you can have lots of data, but unless you don't know how to interpret it, it's
Yeah,
useless.
because my data is like for 2 years. So at first I have a problem, but now almost it is finished. I will start modeling for the same problem using some numerical tool.
Yeah, we are also heading for to make our test sections this summer for 2 years monitoring of our test sections. Yeah, so this summer is
You
gonna be
have to
busy.
do like signal processing. I think if you have installed some sensors, you'll get some signal, vibration data.
Yeah, we will set up a whole data acquisition system over there, our data loggers and all, and we're going to be connecting it to the Wi-Fi or something and monitor
Yeah,
those data.
yeah.
But yeah, that's something frustrates me actually. We are not recording anymore, right? Like being in the civil background, geotechnical background, setting up those sensors. You didn't set up those sensors, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, setting up those sensors is a lot of electrical and coding stuff, and that's really
But
challenging.
I don't need to because when I came here, the professor also already has installed the sensors, so I don't need
Oh,
to do that part. I get
yeah.
just get the data.
So yeah, we have to program all the sensors. I did some last year, but now again we have to do it on a massive field scale. I did in the laboratory setup, but yeah, it's annoying. It took me like 1 or 2 months just to figure out how to install those sensors. Yeah. Yeah, I called the company that made those data loggers, and the guy was really helpful. We literally met for like 6 7 hours on video call to figure out the code and the sense setup and all those.
Okay. For me, there is another company which helped my professor to install those sensors. There is a company in Taiwan, and they use the sensors coming from Germany.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's good. I think the sensors are expensive.
Oh, damn expensive, man. Damn expensive. They they have to like um one of the like we use lasers to monitor the hearing, and one laser is around $2,000.
$2,000. Yeah, similar to this.
Yeah. And yeah, we have like 6 lasers just for the laboratory setup. I don't know how many we're gonna have in the lab in the field.
Okay. I think most of the people have leave the meeting. Few of them have already joined. So, like as usual, we have vote of thanks at the end of meeting, every webinar. So, as usual, I will do that. Okay, someone is want to join now.
Oh, that
So, thanks Jazakallah Wasibhai for your
sure.
valuable time, and you have
Yeah.
given a very detailed presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone has enjoyed this. And the presentation is very concise and very organized, so that I think everyone can write, and I will also able to write easily in the future, and it will
Sure, sure.
help me and everyone to write and get our dream university. Again, thanks
Definitely.
for the presentation.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Thank you for giving the opportunity to present.
So I think Shoaib, you can stop the recording. If you have time, I will introduce my colleagues. Not all,
Yeah,
but
sure. Sure. It's week.